Hi, and welcome back. Some people may think that to retire early, you have to eat ramen noodles and ride your bike everywhere, but that is simply not true. So today I'm going to talk about some other things that you can do to help you retire early that don't involve extreme frugality. If you're new here, my name's Kyria, and in 2024, I retired early to pursue a life of full-time travel and adventure. So let's get started. The first thing you can do is to revisit the term retired. Now, some people argue that retired means that you basically can't ever make any money or have any job again, but that's simply not true. For some people, yes, it's about walking away from any kind of work entirely, but for others, it's about making a pivot, changing the way they live, possibly reducing work hours or increasing hobbies, or possibly even starting a side hustle. So really, your retirement can be anything that you want it to be. It doesn't have to be whatever some people are telling you it has to be. You don't have to sit on the couch and eat bonbons all day. In fact, I hope that you don't, because retirement can be a very fulfilling way to finally have enough finances that you can do what you love instead of having to do what you have to do. So in my mind, basically retirement is quitting a stage of your life that you've been doing for a certain amount of time, and often that is long-term corporate kind of working. And so if you can quit that and go and do things that you are interested in, and just basically try a new phase of your life, I think that's perfect, and that's what it should be all about. It shouldn't be about defining exactly what retirement is and whether or not you classify as someone who's retired. It should be about starting a new phase of your life, a new adventure, in doing things because you want to try them or you want to do them because they make you happy, instead of doing things because you feel like you have to just make money in order to do those. The next thing you can do in order to help you retire early is to track your spending. I've talked about this before. I think this is a critical step to figuring out not only how much money you're going to need to retire or to be able to be financially independent, but also to look and see what you're spending. Because I think much of the challenge is actually just being aware and being proactive and having a plan. So if you want to spend a lot of money on X, Y, or Z, go for it. However, if you're just not even noticing that you're spending that money and your money's kind of going out the door without you even realizing why it's going or where it's going or why it's going so fast, that is the problem. So being aware of what you're spending, to me, is very important. So if you want to go spend money on coffee every day, go and spend money on coffee every day. But if technically you could just make a coffee at home and then you didn't need the coffee every day, and you can look at your spending and see that that's something you could change, then that's just a great way to be more aware of what you're spending. So I suggest tracking a year, and this doesn't have to be as difficult as it sounds. Sure, you can put your everyday spend into an app. That's kind of complicated. Instead, just look at your credit card statement at the end of the year, and if you need to add a few more things, like for instance, you might pay your mortgage or your rent out of your bank account, then add those on and just use the categories that they're using and just see what you're spending. It doesn't really have to be that complicated. I do have one word of caution, and that is sometimes, like I use Chase, for instance, and sometimes they might classify things based on what they think it is, especially if it's a foreign transaction. Like I went to a grocery store in Canada called Metro. They thought that was transportation. So just look over it a little bit, and if you need to make any large changes, make large changes. But all in all, really, it's just kind of about seeing where your money is going and making a plan for the future depending on what you want to do in retirement. So this will give you a much better idea of how much you're going to spend in retirement if you can figure out how much you're spending now. The next thing is to invest. It's amazing how many people will actually have their money in a checking account or under a mattress or even in a savings account, but those things aren't going to keep up with inflation. You really need to invest your money somehow, whether it's in the stock market or real estate or something that is going to keep pace with a little bit more of inflation and has a better track record than, say, a checking account, which essentially makes almost zero. And even a high yield savings account, that can make maybe 3 or 4% at the current time that I'm filming this. But I do remember when high yield savings was not even 2%. So those things can vary. And so you definitely need to make sure your money is somewhere where it can keep up with inflation. So this doesn't have to be like a complicated thing. All you need to do, if you have a job that has a 401k, just make sure you're putting at least the amount that your employer is matching in that 401k. And if you want, you can put more if you have the capacity to put more. And if your employer doesn't offer such a thing, you can also go and open up your own IRA or Roth IRA. It's not that hard. You can go with something like Fidelity or Schwab, which are fairly simple and have a nice interface and don't charge anything for any trades. And if you're a little bit wary or scared to invest because you don't know what to invest in, you can just go for something simple like either an exchange traded fund or an index fund that just tracks either the US markets as a total or maybe just the S&P 500. That would be the most basic way to do it. And if you haven't read and if you're interested in learning a little bit more about this kind of thing, J.R. Collins wrote a book called The Simple Path to Wealth, where he basically was explaining to his daughter how to invest. And he said, really, it's all about being simple. You don't really have to go and be very complicated. Now, you might want to have a little bit more fun. If you do, go for it. However, it does not have to be complicated. You can just put a little bit money in every month, and you'll be amazed at how fast it actually grows. And it's actually very rewarding to see it grow. And sure, you might be afraid. The markets are going to go down, right? Yes, they are going to go down. That is a given. That is a definite 100% chance they are going to go down at some point. However, if you look back at the history of the markets, overall, the S&P 500, since its inception, has basically returned about 10% before inflation, 6% after inflation. So if you keep your money in for a longer term, it's going to, most likely, the chances are, it's going to go up. So put your money in now, think about your future, and don't touch it, don't move it around. And you think, oh, well, stock markets are gambling. Don't touch it, don't move it around. Don't buy and sell. That's where you get into the gambling thing. You're never going to be able to time the market. You need to have time in the market, not time the market. So just remember that. The next thing is to automate. Automate your investments. Pay yourself first. There's many different ways you can do this. First of all, if you pay yourself first, aka pay your bills and then have a certain amount that you're going to put into your investments and saving and retirement fund and everything like that first, then whatever's left over, you can go spend it on that cup of coffee or the movies or whatever it is that you'd like. But pay yourself first. You won't even notice that it's gone, and you'll be amazed how fast that can grow. The best thing to do, like I said, is to put your money in a 401k, and that comes out of your paycheck before you even see it. Those are dollars that if you can handle living without them, you should do that because most likely you won't even notice they're gone. If you get the money first and then have to put it somewhere else, that's going to be a little bit harder. Also, I think automating your bills and transfers is definitely helpful because, again, if you have to go every month and pay each bill or pay your credit cards or transfer the money to a certain account, it's going to be more likely you're going to forget, you're going to miss 1 month. It's better just to send it automatically into your investment accounts and also have the investments set up to automatically buy a certain amount of whatever index or whatnot that you choose every month. Just like clockwork. You don't have to do anything. Once it's set up, it does the work for you and you don't have to do anything, and it will grow without you even realizing it. For me, since I don't have any, W-2 income coming in anymore, I still have my credit cards set up to be paid, all of them, on the 4th of the month. And then on the 1st of the month, I have an automated transfer set to go from my high yield savings account to my checking account. So that way I'm not keeping extra money in my checking account, which basically makes no interest. I'm at least keeping that extra cash in my high yield savings account so that I can pay myself and my bills each month. But again, I don't have to think about it. It just happens and it just works. Of course, life is lumpy and you don't always have the same amount of expenses every month. So I do have a little bit of a buffer there, but I think just keeping it automatic keeps all the thought out of it. You're going to change your mind if you go to pay it or do something. You might think, oh, maybe this month it's not, the markets are down or the markets are up, or I don't know if, blah, blah, blah. We are psychological people and we get easily swayed. It's easier to have it set up so you don't have any emotions in the process. The next thing is to not worry about the Joneses. Stop worrying about the Joneses. It doesn't matter if your neighbor has 3 cars or a nicer car than you, has a bigger house than you, their kids are doing different sports, they're going on more vacations, they're having more fun. Are they really? Really, you need to look at your own life and not compare yourself to other people and decide what it is you actually need. Do you really need 2 cars? As one person working from home? Because if you don't need 2 cars, you could save thousands of dollars on insurance and registration and maintenance and everything if you just cut down to 1 car. And the big house, do you really need those extra rooms? I personally fell into this trap too. I had a 2-bedroom house And I barely used the second bedroom. Sure, sometimes I had people over and they would stay in my guest room, and I even tried to make it into an office, but it just wasn't convenient for me to go into there. I might as well stay in the kitchen where I can kind of do some work around the kitchen while I'm working, and I only had to heat less rooms. And then I tried to make it into an exercise room, but I really found that I liked exercising in the living room better. So all in all, it was probably being used like 2% of the time. So do you really need that extra room? Is it important? And if it is, great. But just think about it and think about all those things. Do you really need any of those purchases? Maybe just think about it for a few days or a week or a month before you buy it instead of just jumping right into it. And you'll end up saving a lot of money. The other thing is, who are the Joneses? Do they really have money, or are they just spending so that they can prove that they're flashy as well? So don't let other people's like quote unquote wealth sway you, because it doesn't really matter. I think that if you're actually wealthy and you don't just need to be flashy, you'll probably have a Honda Civic. You're not going to have a Lamborghini. So the next thing is to negotiate your salary. Whether you're just starting a new job or whether you've been in the job for a long time, it's important to negotiate your salary, especially at the beginning, because that can set the tone for like your whole journey. So if you're in your 20s and you're just getting your first job, set your salary higher at the beginning, and then if you just get a 10% raise every year, you'll be starting from a much higher place. And this specifically especially goes for women. A lot of women are unwilling to ask for what they think they're worth, or maybe they don't think they're worth as much. But I would say take whatever you think is like absolutely crazy amount that you would be like so overjoyed for, and add 10 or 20% to that and ask for that and see what happens. They could say no, but you're no worse off. Same thing with a raise. I ask for a raise every year, but you can't just ask for a raise because I want more money and I want to have more nice things or save more money or whatever the thing is that you want. You actually have to come with a list of why are you important to this company? Why are you an asset to them? Have you brought in more clients? Have you brought in more revenue? Have you automated something that was taking a long time to do? Have you made something more efficient? You need to have your list together and be prepared when you ask for your raise. The next thing is, why not try a mini retirement? So you think you want to retire early, but have you really spent 24 hours with your partner for a month? Have you ever gone traveling for 2 months at a time and had to go through the planning and the moving and the packing and everything, and being away from home, being away from your family, being away from people that you communicate with? Try doing a mini retirement to see if that is something that you're going to like. And I know, like my prior job, you could get a personal leave of absence for 16 weeks or something like that. So you could do something like that, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever the amount is. And some of them are paid, some of them are unpaid. You really just kind of have to look into that for your work, but you don't necessarily have to quit your job to be able to do a longer mini retirement. Or if they don't have any kind of leave of absence, perhaps instead of taking your vacation 1 week at a time, you take it all together. So I actually had 5 weeks of vacation. You could take 5 weeks at the same time. That way you have a little bit of a longer one, and you can kind of feel out like, how do I like being off and being independent for this amount of time? Personally, I actually quit my job a couple of times and went and traveled for a year. Now, maybe that's not something that everyone can do, but I did it, I loved it, and that's kind of what brought me to the place that I am now, which is full-time travel. I know that there are some ups and downs, and I'm aware of them, and so that made me a lot more comfortable saying, okay, this is something I think I want to do for a longer period of time. The next one is to be open, because you don't know what you don't know. So I know everyone says, instead of retiring from something, you should be retiring to something, and that I do think is true. However, I do think also, a little twist to this, is that you don't know what you don't know, and so you're going to find other things that you like. So don't think you have to plan everything out, like I have to have this bucket list or whatever. Now, I'm not saying a bucket list is a bad thing. I personally like having a list of things I can have at my disposal if I'm looking for something to do. However, be open to trying different things that aren't on your bucket list, and maybe try these a little bit before you retire so that you can see like, well, if you think maybe, I don't know if I'm going to have enough to do, I might be bored or whatever, maybe have a bit of a list started beforehand. Maybe go and try, I don't know, ceramics. I've never made a ceramic thing, but maybe that's something I would like, or whatever the thing is. Maybe fishing, maybe windsurfing, maybe, I don't know, learning a new language. Maybe start some of that before you retire so you can see if this is something that actually is going to hold your attention once you have more time on your hands. And last but not least, be smart with credit card spending. And by this, I mean, if you don't care about travel, you could get a cashback card. Or if you do care about travel, obviously, there's a lot of cards that you can use. And one that I think is a good overall card is the Chase Sapphire Preferred. But there are other ones out there. The Capital One, for instance, has 2 points on everything. So a lot of these cards, they have a nice fat 1 category and the rest are just 1 times points. So the Capital One Venture actually has 2 points on everything, 2 times points on everything. And so that could be a good overall one as well. And that way, when you do go on your travels, you won't feel the pain of a high bill. So whether it's your vacation or maybe it's your sabbatical that I talked about, either way, it will help you kind of lower those costs and will make you a little bit more less worried about spending money on quote unquote frivolous things. Which again, like I said, if you know what you're spending and you know that is making you happy, I don't think quote unquote frivolous things are a bad thing. I just think that if you can cut down a little bit on some of them, aka the travel, if you have a good travel card, that can be very helpful. So like for instance, I haven't paid really for a flight in the last few years because I have, the Chase Sapphire, or I have Amex points or whatever it is that I've been using to pay for points. So I do think that kind of helps make you feel better about spending, especially if you are a frugal person, because it feels like you're saving money. And so things like that, just be smart with the way you're using those cards. The other thing is, depends on what you spend the most money on. So it might make sense for you before you retire to have a certain card. For instance, the Amex Gold has 4 times points on groceries, US groceries. So before you retire, you might want that card because you're spending a lot on groceries. Or there are cards where you can change the cash back depending on what it is that you use. So for instance, gas or even electric charging is one of the categories, or home supplies is one of the categories. So it really kind of depends on what you are spending, and then you want to get the card that gets the most points for the thing that you're spending. If it's rent, maybe Built, for instance. If you spend a lot of money at Costco, maybe the Costco card is the thing that you want. But you just kind of want to make sure that you're hopefully maximizing the point system as much as you can. Now, listen, I know this sounds very complicated and a lot of people just roll their eyes into their head when I start talking about this, but if you don't know what to get, just get the Chase Sapphire Preferred. It's good enough for most things and it'll give you points that you can use for travel. So now I've covered 8 things and I would love to hear from you. First of all, where are you in your journey? Are you a 20-year-old just starting to save and invest? Are you a 30 or 40-year-old thinking about early retirement? Are you already early retired? Or are you an older person that's retired? And if you are, I want to hear from you. What lessons have you learned? Because I think we can all learn from each other, and that is the best thing to do, especially if you're older and you've gone through this and you say, hey, listen, actually, I tried this and it was better. I think we can all help each other to learn. And I think that's the best thing about YouTube and, information like this, because I don't want to just tell you what to do. I want you to also give me information. So please put a note in the comments about where you are in your journey, what tips you have for everybody else so that we can all learn from each other. Thanks for watching. If this has been helpful at all, please hit the like and subscribe button so that YouTube will send this content out to other people in the same boat. And again, thank you very much for watching and happy travels.